to the Word, where we get to study the Torah. And the best part, there's no homework, other than living your life, of course. It's like being part of the world's biggest book club that only ever reads one book. So join us. Come on, it's just one book. Everyone can read one book. I read a book, once. NFL's greatest running backs. Yeah, when I was in elementary school, I remember that. The book fair, I bought that book. I went home, I read it. Crazy Legs Hirsch. That was the best chapter. Although now that I think about it, I don't think I finished that book either. I got stuck on Bronco Nagurski and that championship ring of his, a 19 and a half ring size. I just kept reading that sentence over and over again. I couldn't get past it. And how could you? A 19 and a half ring size? That's like the size of my shoulder. And that's the point. That's what we're doing here. You shouldn't have to blow by these things. We're taking God's word, his book, verse by verse, and letting it all in. And we even have some wonderful, recognizable figures to help us through it. She's always been the head of the class wherever she performs, speaks, or sings, including her award-winning one-woman show, Fried Chicken and Latkes, where she explored being Black and Jewish and the daughter of the greatest comedian who ever lived, Richard Pryor. Welcome, the former co-star of the classic 80s sitcom, head of the class, Rain Pryor, in the house. Well, hello. In her house, even though it seems to be in London right now. Could you take, let me ask you, Rain, can you take the latke batter and cover a chicken with it and then fry it up like latke, like batter? God.
I bet you could. Why not?
Well, welcome. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you.
Hey, am I watching a head of the class reunion show? I thought this was remedial learning for the religiously challenged. Hey, wait a minute. It's both. Yes, it's actor, comedian, magician, and the former co-star with Rain on Head of the Class, Dan the Man, if you could still say that, Frischman. All right, I'm clapping. I'm clapping for Rain. I'm clapping for you. I'm clapping. I don't know why.
Thank you. Good. Thanks. Great to see you,
How
Scott.
are you, Dan?
Good. It's been a long time. You're looking even more alike a cross between Martin Scorsese and Albert Brooks than I remember.
I used to work with Dan many years ago, and apparently I look like Albert Brooks then. All right, well, hey, let's move on. Before doing this show, she actually thought Genesis was a 90s boy band and not the awe-inspiring 70s super band. Welcome our resident brainiac actress, Jackie Vene. Hello, Jackie. He once rented himself out as a John Belushi lookalike to frat parties, but no one knows who John Belushi is anymore. So now he rents himself out as El Chapo. Welcome, comedian, podcast sensation, and my co-host, Mr. Sandy Danto.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so let's get this thing going. We're at Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain. And she said, I have acquired a man with the Lord. And we move on to verse 2. And she continued to bear his brother Abel. And Abel was a shepherd of flocks, and Cain was a tiller of the soil. Wow, so here's a record of the first child birthed from a human being. And the wife tells the man, hey, I've acquired a man with the Lord. Really? Not with me? But we did that thing, we both made the crazy faces and, and sounds, the thing that we did to you that made us both feel like we were before you ate the apple at the Garden of Eden. We felt like that. Don't you remember? Don't I get any credit for the kid? Oh, God has handed over the house, the kid, to mom. Dan, how much does the man play in bringing life into this world? And if he didn't really have any meaningful role in the creation of the person, or perhaps in bringing this person onto earth, then why should a man care about the kid?
Well, there you go, Scott. You're asking the right guy, I got to tell you, because never been married, single man all my life. And yet I found out almost 3 years ago now, 2.5, that I have a daughter. Now, this occurred because there was a begetting somewhere when I was 22, and the birth mom, also with the biblical name of Sarah, was 19. I was living in a house with 7 comedians, kind of a bizarre fraternity house. Andrew Dice Clay and Yakov Smirnov were my housemates, and it was just
The house.
crazy time. However, I had a 3-month relationship with the lovely Sarah, and she took off because, she's 19 and does she need a reason? And I did not know a whit about any of this until I found out indirectly through 23andMe. My cousin, first cousin Larry, found out he joined the 23andMe and found out he had a first cousin. Blah blah blah. It turns out it's my daughter. And this kind of leads you to think that the man, not so important. All she knew originally was that I was an actor and a comedian, a Jewish comedian. And she said, imagine my chagrin when I found out you weren't Jerry Seinfeld.
She was.
So I already knew. I said, well, that's my girl, because that's
the answer.
Dan.
Yes.
My cousin Larry also did 23andMe, and he got some news that he's married to his third cousin. So I would say, on the scope of news that you could get from 23andMe, yours is much better.
a little more upbeat, I would say.
Rain.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of ways to go here,
Let's
because
go.
you could talk about it from your perspective, or you could talk about it from, being the daughter of Richard Pryor.
Right.
And
He's
how
a prime example. He's a prime example to me of someone who liked the idea to acquire kids, but just not the responsibility. He was a connoisseur of children. There's 6 of us, but all of them have different mothers.
So
He was busy.
So he liked the acquisition part, but not the other stuff.
Exactly.
Jackie, do you think like human souls already exist in some other plane of existence, and the woman perhaps has like a lease arrangement with God that somehow in some other existence?
I've heard of that as like a soul contract, which means that like there are specific souls that have contracts with other souls to play specific roles in each other's lives, and they kind of like sign on to that before. But in my case, the father's role was so vital and important for me to become who I am, because in my case, my mother, she passed away like 4 or 5 years ago of drug and alcohol overdose. And she was this wonderful, very fairy-like woman who was very heads in the clouds and like taught us to be young and artistic. But my dad was very grounded and taught us to be healthy, to take care of ourselves, to come home on time, and so like if I didn't have that, then I would not be like, I couldn't imagine if my mom just raised us totally on our own. I think I'm better off just because my dad was who he was in my life.
That's so beautiful.
Wow. Sandy, are you able to be funny now?
It's a miracle that you can't hear both of my screaming daughters right now. I can say that's a miracle of life. That's a miracle of production right now. And I can relate to trying to nurture my children, because I try to instill in them similar, yin and yang. Yeah, and plus, like, Eve was totally cheating on Adam with God. Not cool, Eve.
Right.
Come back, we're going to deal with, Cain and Abel. So, like, like, what's up with those Adam and Eve boys down the street, you know? That's what we're going to find out. And funny, I don't see them around, one of them around anymore. Come back, we'll find out what's going on over there. Hey, welcome back. We're going to keep going here with Genesis chapter 4, verse 3 to verse 7. Now it came to pass at the end of days that Cain brought of the fruit of the soil an offering to the Lord. And we'll go right to verse 4. And Abel, he too brought of the firstborn of his flocks and of their fattest. And the Lord turned to Abel and to his offering. And we move on to verse 5. But to Cain and to his offering, he did not turn. And it annoyed Cain exceedingly, and his countenance fell. Well, Abel's gift feels like an actual sacrifice, big plumpy lamb, you know, but giving God a piece of fruit, I don't know. Tough to beat a big plump sheep, you know? Quite possibly barbecued with a little special sauce. Really? You know, you with a maybe like an apricot. Cain should have went with like the whole fruit basket thing, you know, like jus pears, Granny Smith apples, throwing those macadamia nuts, and those caramel drizzled white chocolate pretzels they throw in that basket. And this story suddenly takes a whole different turn, right? But he didn't know. He gifted God first. And what do you give God anyway? I mean, really, that's a tough gift, especially like without Amazon, Sandy. And we move on to verse 6, trying to figure this out. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you annoyed? And why is your countenance fallen? And we move to verse 7. Is it not so that if you improve, it will be forgiven you? If you do not improve, however, at the entrance, sin is lying, and to you is its longing, but you can rule over it. Sandy.
Cain's gift, he re-gifted, he stole something from God and gave it to him as a gift. That's like the next level re-gifting. God saw right through it.
He picked up a plum from the ground and here, God, here you go.
But to be fair, what do you get the God who has everything? A Sherry's Berries arrangement? a subscription to the New York Times? What do you get? The God who has everything.
I don't know. Dan, do you know?
Costco card. So many things you can get at Costco. And you don't have to decide.
Yeah, God would run wild at Costco.
Bulk.
I'm reminded of when I used to, when I was answering telephones and being a gopher at the Comedy Store in my early 20s. And Mitzi Shore, who was, you know, she was the comedy. Yeah, Mitzi. Dan, go get Muffy for me. I had to go get her dog from her house, who would like sit and bark at me because he knew that I was its servant. But Mitzi was like had this giant desk in her office down the hall. And I was good friends with a comedian named Andy Lederer. And Andy and I were kind of mischievous together. And the whole thing at the Comedy Store, even though I was being a gopher, I still wouldn't get many spots on the show. So we were always trying to figure out a way to butter up Mitzi and to curry favor and get better spots. So one time, it was her birthday, and we walked into her office, myself and my friend Andy, holding these giant, beautifully potted palms, like really big. And she was just like blown away. Wow, that was really something. And what she didn't realize is that we just picked them up in the green room. Oh. Because we knew that she never goes into the green room. So where I answer the telephones. So we actually just picked them up and carried them down the hall and said, happy birthday. It's really, congratulate.
Rain.
Yes.
Why do some of us listen to God or would say like our inner voice and not do something we know is wrong, and yet we do it anyway?
The human nature is for us to test the hot stove. We're getting told it's hot, but we have to experience it for ourselves that it's hot.
Jackie,
Yeah.
why is it so hard to overcome sin?
I think Rain hit the nail on the head. You gotta experience it for yourself, and just we want to gain a sense of freedom. And someone telling us that we're not allowed to do something puts us into a cage of what we can and can't be. And I think we have this instinct nature to prove even to God himself in this situation, like, hey, I know you're my creator. We see it with parents and children all the time. Listen, I know you're the creator, but I'm going to do what I want to do because I have it comes down to free will, I guess.
And Sandy, like, is Cain thinking like, all right, God probably knows what I'm up to, but I'm going to toss him a couple of pieces of fruit, and I think I can, kind of do, I could set God up. He could really like me. This is going to work. And when I take care of, business here that's coming up, was that the tactic?
In my line of work, going on stage and telling jokes, it's all about the presentation. There are plenty of people with terrible jokes who are great comedians who just go up there and sell it. You know what? Like, I've had to follow Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle and all kinds of comics who are way out of my league. And if you go up there with a face that makes it look like your countenance is going to fall, then the audience is going to feel that way about you too. And Cain didn't present it. If he had, presented it better, maybe made it into an edible arrangement, done something more with it. Maybe he wanted to collaborate with Abel on a charcuterie board and he didn't want to do that. I don't like how this pits them two against each other. I think there's no reason for them to have to compete.
I feel like God's saying, hey, I don't want any gifts. I want behavior.
Oh, right.
All right. Hey,
Hey.
when we come back, we're going to get to the nasty part. Welcome back. We're continuing with Cain and Abel. And Cain spoke to Abel, his brother. And it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. Oh boy. And then we move to verse 9. And the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? So here we are, one of the most famous or infamous lines in all of human history, perhaps. If you can't feel responsible and love for your brother, well, then maybe you are cut off from seeing, feeling, experiencing the oneness with any life, be it human, animal, plant. Perhaps then you have missed the whole point of our existence on earth. The golden rule, Leviticus 19:18, you shall love thy neighbor as thyself. And it might just start by knowing where your brother is tonight. Okay. Dan, we start with you. Got a couple of brothers, right?
I do. I have two older brothers. I couldn't imagine not caring about where my brother was and what they were doing. It would make me cry if I didn't know it.
Jackie, you've got thoughts on this?
The idea of everyone having this idea that I am my brother's keeper and trying to protect their loved ones, I think sometimes it does more harm than good.
Nice.
Everyone on both sides, Republican or Democrat, is spewing their opinions in the effort to be their brother's keeper. But if instead we just had the opinion of, I'm not my brother's keeper, even if you're my brother, you're responsible for your actions, you're responsible for this. I can't control you. At the end of the day, me saying, hey, you have to do this. You have to, because you're going to die if you don't. People will have the opinion on the other side. No, you don't understand. You're going to die if you don't. Like, and it just creates this fury of, I'm trying to be the godlike savior. But in the end, we're just both so hard-headed in our ways and righteous, trying to be God's voice.
Great. Sandy, what do you make of this?
Look, God stoked the fire on that one. Okay. That's first of all. Second of all, in the spirit of the greater
did he
good,
really?
he could have just done what everyone else in the universe does when they get a gift they don't like and smiled and said, thanks.
But it's interesting. God tests Cain in this way. He gives the nod to Abel. He knows that that's going to send him off. And he does it because he's setting us up for a lot of this down the road, humanity. That you are not going to get what you want every time. And it's how you react to this is the grand test of our existence here. You know, it's endless. There's always someone better than you. There's always someone prettier than you. There's always someone who gave a better gift. And you could just continually react to this, you know, in negative ways, or you could just go, you know what? I have these thoughts, but I can move on from these things. And God's saying, get ready. Find a way to make peace with this. God help us all. All right. Thank you, guys. And that's it for the word. I thank you all my guests, all of them.